Hey guys, it is Agent S here, and today I have a discussion I've been wanting to make for a while now. I did not expect this. I did not expect to make this discussion, but here we go. So about months ago, we had the Pokemon Presents that we get on Pokemon Day every year, and it usually announces what the next Pokemon game is or DLC every 3 years or so. So yeah, so obviously last year we had the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet expansion pass, which had the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc. And they're both pretty great DLCs that both had a great story that continued on the lore of the Paldea region. And after that, I was hoping that my second favorite Pokemon generation would finally get a remake, and that is Black and White. I was hoping we would get a Black and White remake, whether Ilka makes it, Game Freak makes it, or some other studio would make it. I personally want an HD 2D. I personally want an HD 2D remake. That's what I would personally love to see. So yeah, and guess what? I was going in there on Pokemon Day. I was watching it in class, expecting us to get a Black and White remake. Because, after Sword and Shield had its DLC in 2020, and the base game in 2019, we had Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl in 2021. Now in the past, it's always been one remake per console and stuff, and we're gonna remake every other generation since Gen 4. But here's the thing. That was when Pokemon games were only on one... see, for the first 4 generations, Pokemon was only a one installment per console franchise. We had Kanto on the Game Boy, we had Johto on the Game Boy Color, we had Hoenn on the Game Boy Advance, and then we had Sinnoh on the DS, and then we had Black and White and its sequel on the DS. You see, and from that point onward, Pokemon has had two. It has 2 major installments per generation. Well, per console. So, per console generation. So, like, we had we had X and Y, and then Sun and Moon on the 3DS, and then we had Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, and also Legends Arceus and Legends ZA on the Switch. So, yeah. So because we had because the DS had 2 Pokemon generations on there, I was expecting us to get Black White Remake, and guess what? We haven't gotten it yet. And today I want to talk about that. Why haven't we gotten Pokemon Black and White Remake announced? Because on Pokemon Day, we did not get Pokemon Black and White Remake announced. There was no Pokemon Black and White Remake announced. We instead had we instead had the unexpected Pokemon Legends Z. Yeah, yes, another Legends game. Now I'm all for it. I really enjoy Legends Arceus a lot. I like Arceus a lot, although I hated the progression because I hated how you're forced to level up the Pokédex rank just to pursue the story. I really wish you could just. I really wish you could just finish one area and able to go to the other quickly. I wish the game had that, but regardless, I really enjoyed the gameplay format, and it's pretty unique. And having Scarlet and Violet took and I'm glad Scarlet and Violet expanded Legends Arceus' gameplay formula. So yeah, but I was not expecting another Legends game. We were getting Legends ZA in 2025, probably as like one of the last big Switch games, probably like right after the Switch 2 releases. Pokemon games usually stay on last gen until about 2 years after the console launch. So yeah, as we've seen with Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, Black and White 2, and Ultra Sun Moon. So yeah, and now I'm very excited for Legends ZA. Legends ZA is a sequel to X and Y, just like how Legends Arceus is a prequel to Diamond and Pearl. So I was expecting, but because one of but because Sinnoh is about creation and stuff, because the lore of Sinnoh is about the creation of the Pokemon universe, and how Dialga is is the god of space, and Palkia is the god of time. It made sense that we would get a Legends prequel game, but I was not expecting Legends ZA, a sequel to X and Y with a futuristic Kalos. And the whole game's going to be set in Lumio City. That's going to be pretty cool. But that begs the question, because we're getting that in 2025, where's the Black and White remake? Now either one of three things could be happening. One, they're not doing it at all. Two, they're saving it for the next-gen console. Or three, and probably the most likely one, they're doing it the same year as ZA, but they're gonna... but there's why Pokemon is skipping years because, well, one reason could be Switch to launch. Another could be because, you see, it's very likely that Black and White Remake is going to be is 1 and 2 combined. Just like in most game collections, how when you first boot up, you choose which game you want to play. It'd probably be like that. I think they're going to combine Black 1 and Black 2 and White 1 and White 2 because canonically, Hilbert or Hilda's legendary in the first game is the opposite of what N has in the second game. So, for example, in Pokemon White, the protagonist Zekrom is the Zekrom that the protagonist canonically has is the opposite of what N has in White 2, because White 2 N has Reshiram that he gives you during the post game, and same and vice versa for Black. For Black, your Reshiram in Black 1 it is N Zekrom in Black 2 that he gives you during the post game. So yeah, because of that, because of the timeline and stuff, it's very likely that they're going to combine Black 1 and Black 2 and White 1 and White 2 and have one version that has Black 1 and 2 1 with White 1 and 2 because skipping a third version makes, well, I mean, I'm not third version, skipping a sequel makes no sense. It will make no sense to remake the first game with not the second because Pokemon games, I mean, they have a story, but they don't like focus on the story. Whereas Black and White and its sequel actually had a pretty huge story focus with Team not just with Team Plasma, but the game's other characters and stuff. They have the most story of any Pokemon game. So yeah, and it doesn't make any sense to leave them out. And because they have to spend the extra year, because it's been the extra year updating the Unova map. Well, obviously, because here's the thing, if they were to release Black and White 1 and Black and White 2 a year apart, the second one would only take like a year to make because it wouldn't take much longer to develop than the first would because they would reuse assets. Because Black and White 2 reused assets from the first game, obviously. It took the existing Unova map and added on to it. I thought the same would go for Black and White 2 remade because so I assume that if Black and White 1 and 2 is being remade right now, that Ilka started on it right after Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl or whatever other studio if they're working on it instead. So because of that, it would probably take 3 years. It would probably take like 2 to 3 years to develop Black and White 1, and only up to a year for 2 because you only have to update the Unova map and add new assets and stuff. So because of the way the story is structured, it's much easier to combine them, and that's probably why they're waiting an extra year. Pokemon is coming 2024. This is the first time since 2015 that we've had no Pokemon content at all. Well, we didn't have a Pokemon game in 2020 or 2023, but we had DLC instead. In 2015, we were supposed to get Pokemon Z, and we didn't. We got nothing. It's a Game Freak just made us wait for Sun and Moon the following year. So when we should have got to Pokemon Z that year. So yeah. So my theory is that they're waiting until November of 2025 for Pokemon Black and White 1 and 2 remade. Have one version with Black 1 and 2 and another with White 1 and 2. Probably November of 2025 is like one of the last Switch games. And that would be a year after the Switch 2. If we're expecting, we're expecting Switch 2 in this November. So that means that next November we get Black and White Remake, and Legends ZA is probably late January, just like Legends Arceus was. Probably like late January. Or it could be in February, I don't really know. But more likely late January, judging by Legends Arceus. And I'm guessing Nintendo wants to get the Switch 2 out of the way in November, and they don't want anything else in that month. So that could be why Legends ZA is not this November. But for the better anyway, because after the troubled launch of Scarlet and Violet and how buggy it was, Pokemon deserves more time for optimization. Because, well, you guys already know this already about Scarlet and Violet, but at launch, it was super buggy and nearly unplayable. Now, I didn't get it day one. I got it like a month later and played it over Christmas break. But yeah, it was super buggy from what I know at launch. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is basically the Cyberpunk 2077 of JRPGs, basically. Yeah. It was, now, the game's mostly playable now, although I still encountered a lot of bugs. So yeah. I don't think they're skipping Black and White Remake. I don't think they're the waiting for the next gen. I think we're gonna get it in November of 2025. Which means that if it's still happening on the Switch, then we would get X and Y Remake on the Switch 2 in like 2028, and then Ultra Sun and Moon Remake in like 2031 maybe? 2032 probably? Yeah, very far off, I know. It seems like Pokemon remakes are happening 15 years after the original at this point. Because next year is the 15th anniversary of Black and White, and Pokemon and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl released 15 years after the original game. The Ruby and Sapphire was only about 10 years later. Well, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire was. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire was only a little over 10 years after after the original, and so was Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Heart Gold and Soul Silver was only like 10 years after the original, and Fire Red and Leaf Green, that was like 6 years after the original. Well, 8 years for Japan. 8 years for Japan, 6 years for us, because we got Pokemon Red and Blue 2 years after Japan got Red and Green. As Pokemon games released in Japan first, obviously, before X and Y. X and Y onwards, they all had a simultaneous worldwide release, which most JRPG studios have been implementing now. Except for Nihon Falcom, because those games take forever to localize. Like, the Trails games have huge text, so NAS America takes like 2 years to localize those. So yeah, now one thing for the future of Pokemon is January 2025 we get Legends EA, and then November 2025 we get Black and White 1 and 2 remade. The reason why not 2024 is because Switch 2 launched, and also because they need the extra time to remake the second Black and White as well. It's not just reusing the Unova map; they also gotta add the new Pokemon, add the new characters, add all that stuff, and the new story, all that stuff. So yeah, and then we'll probably get the Gen 10 game in November of 2026, 2 years after the Switch 2 launch. It'll be on the Switch 2, obviously. Yeah. 2026 is when we get the Gen 10 game, very likely, and then 2027 the DLC. That means the X and Y remake would be 2028. What I personally think, though, is that if the X and Y remake is being saved for 2028 on the Switch 2, then they probably should have just waited for ZA to happen then, since ZA it is a sequel to the X and Y. Because Legends Arceus came right after BDSP for that reason. So, yeah. Anyways, this quick discussion I wanted to make before my Agent Awards that's going to be coming in April. See you guys next time, Agent SLs. Also, by the way, there will be a huge surprise at the end of the Agent Awards in April. I'm going to tell you this, there will be a huge surprise that you're not going to want to miss. See you guys then.